Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming in today. I hate that you're here for another incident like this. Obviously, a tragic incident because there was a loss of life. So I know this is difficult for the loved ones of that gentleman, but I caution everyone not to forget how difficult this is for the officers involved as well. This was a house that we had been to before, about a week prior. Related to a mental health crisis situation. We were able to get the gentleman medical care on that call. This call, even though the other did have indications of potential violence, this one took a different turn. You could hear just from the 911 call from the mother, the desperation in her voice, the fear, begging her own son not to hit her anymore, not to kill her, as he was telling her he was going to kill her with a knife. And I appreciate the fact that as officers arrived, again, they didn't try to rush things. They tried to communicate with this gentleman, tried to reason with him, let him know they did not want to hurt him, but they also knew that there was an active threat of violence, even homicidal violence, going on inside of that home, and there was definitely a threat that someone could be killed inside that home. When they found they were not going to be able to make entry through the front, one officer continued speaking, trying to speak with the gentleman to reason with him, while two other officers went around to the back to find an alternate entry point. Once there, they paused long enough to look in the windows, try to get any intelligence they could about what was going on the inside. They developed a plan, and upon being able to breach that door, to kick it open, as soon as the door came open, you could see in the video the gentleman came charging out of the door with not one but two knives out and ready to use against my officers. They were presented with a choice. They chose to protect themselves, which is what I expect them to do. As soon as the gentleman fell to the ground, you can see him trying to get up again, still having the knives in his possession. They continued to give commands for him to drop the knife. He did so. The officers did their best to provide medical aid immediately after, once it was safe to do so. But unfortunately, despite their efforts and the efforts of medical professionals that made the scene, he was pronounced deceased on scene. This is not the kind of situation any officer wants to have to respond to, but the fact is when we're called and we have a resident of Fort Worth who's facing mortal danger, we have to respond. This was not a situation where they could sit back and just wait because of the ongoing deadly threat to the mother. They had to act. They did so the best they could. They were faced with a deadly threat, and they did what we trained them to do. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this critical police incident.
Knowing that the mom was his main focus that night, have you yourself been able to talk to the family about how this unfolded and how they feel about, you saved the mother's life, but sadly her son is no longer with us after this?
I have not been able to talk with the family yet out of respect to the ongoing investigation. I want to make sure if that opportunity does present itself, that I wait for the right time to do so, and quite frankly, I think the mother needs time to process and grieve herself.
Chief, you said that you guys had responded to this house for another incident about a week prior. Was that week prior the first time, or has there been ongoing issues with this family?
That's the first time that we've found that we've had to respond to this residence.
And you may not know the answer to this. Just listening to the 911 call, it appears that the mother was trying to give information without letting her son know that she was on the call. She kept not answering the operator. In your estimation, is that what was happening in that exchange?
I got the same impression when I listened, but I can't guarantee if that was done intentionally on her part, or if maybe she was in shock and she just didn't know what to say. What was very apparent was she was absolutely terrified for her life.
When you go to a home that's had a previous mental issue or some kind of mental health issue, are the officers made aware of that before they enter that situation?
Anytime that we have any kind of information that there's a history of violence or anything else that should be concerning to us, Yes, oftentimes there's even an indicator on that residence when the call is dispatched. But in addition to that, we have our real-time crime center who often will research the location as officers are en route and will give information real time.
We often hear about the danger of domestic situations, domestic violence, or things of this nature. What does this video and this 911 call show us about the nature of those calls when you guys have to answer them?
I think this call makes those dangers and threats very real. It's one thing for me to stand up here and explain to you what it's like having responded to similar situations in my career, but to hear the desperation in that mother's voice, to see the knife plunge through that screen door as officers are trying to talk to this gentleman, or seeing him come out of nowhere, it seems, with those knives charging at those officers in the dark, it's terrifying for everyone involved. And I believe seeing the video, hearing the audio gives a very accurate description of how tense and dynamic these situations can be.
You talk about the importance of like those relationships going where it's like they would know like that the address has a history, and then you've got dispatch trying to give the officers any information he can, like that all of that, everyone's working together to keep everybody safe there.
This is an absolute team effort. From, quite frankly, the mother or any other resident who calls us to give us information to let us know that someone's in danger, our dispatchers, our call takers, everyone at our communications center, the incredible work that they do gathering information. And as it was pointed out already, the mother wasn't even able to communicate directly and answer those questions directly, but she got the point across what the problem was. Our call taker recognized that and was able to relay that information to our officers before they responded. It's a complete team effort.
We heard on there that she didn't actually give an address. Can you talk about how they figured out where she was?
When someone calls, particularly from a landline, but we also have capabilities now with cell phones, because most often that is what people use, it can give us a location of the residence or business or location from which a person is calling, which is very helpful for us because people are not always able to give their location when they call us.
Can you give us any details about the call the week before, like what sort of mental health or medical services were rendered? What was the reason for the call? I know you said mental health crisis. Anything else you can give us?
Right, there was a mental health crisis, some similarities to what we saw today, but not nearly as violent. And because of that, because of the cooperation officers were able to gain in that situation, they were able to take the gentleman to a hospital to receive the medical care he needed from medical professionals. Unfortunately, in this situation, that wasn't an option.
Do you think your officers have the resources to deal with these mental health crises? Is there more that we could be doing that could have prevented it? They were there the week before.
I think there's always more that can be done to address the mental health crisis we're seeing across the country and the world. I'll say from the standpoint of the Fort Worth Police Department, we are providing training to every officer in our academy. These officers that responded had received training in crisis intervention training and dealing with people who may be in mental health crisis. The fact of the matter is this is a societal issue. We will do our part, don't get me wrong, but we can't be the only ones that are part of the solution.
Chief, we'll take one more question, sir. Anybody else?
When you know there's a mental health history in there, we've seen other departments possibly send out somebody who specializes in mental health. Is that something Fort Worth is looking at later down the road to maybe have somebody, when you know there's a mental health issue or history at a location, possibly bringing somebody on in case it turns into a standoff or something, maybe be able to guide the officers on how to talk them down? Sadly, this went violent very, very quick, and that wouldn't have helped. Is that something the department's looking at?
That's a great question, and it's actually something we've been doing for many years now. In addition to our crisis intervention team, many of whom are crisis and hostage negotiators who are dispatched oftentimes to calls like this, but unfortunately weren't able to make it in time to this call. Not only are they receiving training even above and beyond what the other officers receive, they are often partnered with a mental health professional, someone who is not a police officer, but is a social worker, a counselor, someone who is master level or above trained in their profession. and oftentimes they're able to respond and assist as well. Some situations are so dynamic and become violent so quickly, sometimes their services, we don't have time to provide those. But whenever and wherever possible, we make sure we engage those professionals in conversation to try to establish a dialogue and oftentimes even prevent the officers from having to make contact. So we have been doing that. We're always looking at other opportunities, looking at things that others may be doing across the country or ways we can innovate ourselves. Anything we can do to prevent these from even happening in the first place makes that the best option clearly, which is why our crisis intervention team, along with mental health professionals, will often respond to locations prior to a crisis, if it's someone we know who has been in crisis before, to try to make sure they never get to that point. Folks, we were going to give some sound now in Spanish. We'll allow some time to reset before we cover the next CPI. Please know that the videos will be made available on a link on the information that we released to you. Thank you.